The Adult Ballet Studio is a podcast featuring conversations with the empowering voices of the adult ballet community, a world where passion has no limits and dreams can take flight. My name's Elizabeth Blossfield, and I'm an adult ballet dancer and your host. Welcome to the studio. Happy Tuesday and welcome back to the Adult Ballet Studio, everybody. I'm so excited to introduce our guest today. It's someone most of you know and love and have been requesting as a guest since I started this podcast. And today it's happening. Kathryn Morgan is in the Adult Ballet Studio, and I felt so lucky to have this conversation with her. She's a trailblazing ballerina, or a bunhead as she described herself in this interview, who's redefined what a ballet career can look like beyond traditional company life. She began her professional career in 2006 with the New York City Ballet, rising to the rank of soloist before making the difficult decision to leave the company to focus on some personal health challenges. She made a return to the stage with Miami City Ballet in 2019. But in 2020, in the midst of pandemic shutdowns that challenged every industry, including the performing arts, she began transforming the ballet landscape in another way by founding her brand, Kathryn Morgan Friends. This is a community dedicated to celebrating dancers for who they are, beyond only their technical skills. Her platform offers online classes, workshops, and retreats, emphasizing the joy of dance and creating a supportive environment for adult ballet dancers in particular. Through her online classes, YouTube channel, social media platform, and workshops, Kathryn continues to inspire and empower dancers at all levels, challenging traditional norms for ballet and advocating for a more inclusive culture within the art form. Her willingness to speak out against toxic ballet culture and instead create a welcoming environment in her classes has not only enriched ballet as a whole, but has sparked meaningful conversations about what being a successful, healthy, and well-rounded dancer truly looks like. I'm so grateful that she took the time to share a little bit of her story and what she's been working on lately on this podcast, and I can't wait for you to hear from her. By the way, our conversation discusses body image and health struggles, particularly related to diet culture and weight, which I know can be a sensitive topic for some listeners. These topics are all throughout our conversation, so please be kind to yourself and fast forward if you hear something that's difficult for you. But there are two places where that discussion is particularly detailed. It's around minutes 4 through 11, and again during minutes 21 through 27. All right, let's hear from Kathryn. It's great to meet you.
It's great to meet you.
Everybody's been so excited for you to come on this podcast. I've been getting since the beginning. I've been getting requests for you to come on. So I know that everybody knows you and loves you, and they're going to be really excited to hear from you. I just wanted to learn a little bit more about how you were first introduced to ballet and when you decided to pursue it professionally.
Doing ballet is like the only thing I've ever wanted to do as a career. The story goes that my parents they were flipping channels because I was born in 88. So this was about late 89, Christmas of 89. And I was only like 14, 15 months old. And the Bolshoi was on television doing the Nutcracker. And my mom was like, "Look, Katie, ballerinas." And everybody calls me Katie. At least my parents do. Nobody here does, but most people call me Katie where I'm from. And I ran out of the room and she was like, "All right, well, never mind." But I came back and I had a bear with a tutu, and I took the tutu off the bear, put it on me, and started like trying to mimic them.
So cute.
And so my parents were like, "Okay." So as soon as I was old enough, they put me in dance class. And by the time I was 8, it was like, that was it for me. So very, very young. And even my parents, they tried to get me into like other things like soccer, gymnastics. And I just cried and was terrible and just was like, "I want to go to dance." So that was it. And then when I was 10, we went to New York for a Thanksgiving trip. And that's when I saw New York City Ballet for the first time. And that I walked out of that performance going, I want to be up there. That's what I want to do. And I just worked at it, and eventually that's where I ended up. And then of course everything else happened, but it was just always what I wanted to do.
It sounds like it was such a calling. It started from, such a young age, that first introduction, and that was it.
That was it.
I love that. That's amazing.
Yep.
And I know, so then after that, you began your professional career with New York City Ballet, which is a dream come true, such an iconic, ballet institution. You started as an apprentice there and later were promoted to soloist. So what were some highlights from your time performing with the company?
I mean, it was a dream career in the 5 or 6 years I was there. I was fortunate enough to be hired at 17. And I think it was good because I didn't realize what a big deal it was. I think if I had been even slightly older, I would have freaked out. But, to be dancing full time as a junior in high school, I was going into my senior year. I ended up doing Juliet in the full length Romeo and Juliet at 18. First did the balcony scene at 17. Then I did Sugar Plum at 19 and Aurora in the Sleeping Beauty at 20. And shortly thereafter was promoted. I did the wedding pas de deux. They promoted me and then I did the full. And yeah, it was a whirlwind. It was incredible. And I think because I was just that kid that loved ballet, I was such a bunhead. I never, I was not a partier. I didn't really have a lot of friends. I was the buckle down bunhead. And I think that served me really well because I got to do so many big roles so early.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are huge roles to tackle right at the beginning of your career, and so young. So that's incredible. I know, you've been very open about the fact that ballet isn't a smooth ride, I think for anybody, but, it can be kind of rough out there. So for a
Yes.
ballerina. So
Very much so.
that you left New York City Ballet in 2012 due to some health challenges. You've been really open about that. And, I wanted to tell you that we in the ballet community appreciate so much your openness about, not just physical health, but also mental health, because I think that's such a real struggle in ballet that isn't talked about often enough.
Thank you.
And so I can imagine, that a lot of dancers sort of struggle with their relationship to ballet versus their relationship with their health. What led you to sort of decide that you needed to take a break and make the right decisions for your body? How did that sort of happen?
I wasn't getting better. Thyroid disorders and autoimmune conditions like this typically don't show up in 21-year-olds. And so nobody could figure out what it was. I was getting the full body scan. Are you aware that you have put on weight? And I'm like, really? I had no idea. Not a clue. I don't stare at myself in the mirror every day and notice every ounce difference.
Right.
So and then I started to not be able to dance. My muscles started giving out. My feet started giving out. I just even couldn't get through the day without taking a nap. And so it got to a point where I was in the company for 2 years and never got on the stage once. So from 2010 to 2012, they kept me around. I mean, I know a lot of people had issues with him, but Peter Martins was nothing but lovely to me. And he was like, I just, we're here for you. I'll keep you in. I would love to just keep you forever if I could while you figure this out. But it got to a point where I felt like I owed them something. And well, they're keeping me around and I can't fit in the costume, or they keep me around and I can't dance. I feel horrible. I look horrible. So I decided finally I can't get well and stay here. The pressure of being in New York, the pressure of being on the Lincoln Center stage every single night, couldn't get better. So I left the company, and it was only after that we actually figured out it was an autoimmune condition. Up until that point, they thought it was just a low functioning thyroid. And the doctors were all like, the medicine you're taking, it should be getting better. Why are you still struggling? So after I left, it was like, oh, okay, let's dig deeper. And then I thought, well, I'll just fix it and I'll go back. And then it turned into a huge other saga that never ended up happening. It was just this feeling of like, I can't get better unless I fully remove myself from this pressure cooker situation. So that's when I decided to leave.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's so hard that, all that pressure of, you're in a career where you're on stage all the time in front of audiences. And then when you're in technique class, you're in front of mirrors, as you said, wearing, tight clothing, noticing every little change in your body. So going through something like that is hard enough on its own. And then also being in those situations where you're in front of so many people all day long, including yourself, staring at yourself in the mirror. I can imagine that's amplified, just the mental health aspect of that.
It is. And with New York City Ballet in particular, they do so many new works, so many new pieces, such a big season that you're always getting fit for costumes. I mean, we have a costume fitting like every week for something. And it was just humiliating to go down to the costume house and costumes I fit in 6 months, a year ago, I couldn't even close. And them going, all right, we have to like fix this. And then there's so many costumes that are so old and so expensive, they're not going to fix them. They just are what they are and you better fit it. And so it was just this ongoing, like all these new ballets all the time. The critics are always coming. Like it's just a huge amount of pressure in that company in particular.
Yeah. And this is the ballet world. So we already have, all the body image issues anyway. So, you're gaining weight and maybe by everybody else's standards, it's fine. But in ballet, it feels like this huge thing. Thank you for being so open about that. And I want to talk a little bit more about the body image issues that you've spoken out about in a little bit. But I'm curious also, because you made a return to the stage 7 years later with the Miami City Ballet. And then in 2020, you finally decided to sort of step away from company life and pursue dancing on your own terms. And I was curious what factors sort of influenced that decision and how has your perspective on your dance career kind of shifted since then?
When I joined Miami, I was already in my 30s. I think I was 31. And so I had a whole new perspective and had lived that 7 years and had lived, with that extra 2 years at City Ballet that I was on the stage, it ended up being 9 years where I had really been on stage. So I had a whole new perspective of being a person first because I literally hit rock bottom and didn't know what to do because my entire identity was wrapped up as a ballerina. So I had to literally figure out who I was. I started YouTube, I started speaking out. So I had this whole new perspective on it. And when I was hired in Miami, I was led to believe that the ballet world had really started to change. Things that were said to me at my audition, oh, you look beautiful, we love what you stand for, all of that. But then when I actually got into company life and I started seeing the day-to-day and I saw how not only I was treated, but other dancers and things that were said, I first started reverting back to my 18, 19, 20-year-old crazy. Like when I was, first getting ill. And then I thought, okay, I'm literally 31 years old and feeling like I'm an 18-year-old again into the people pleasing and what do they think of me and who's watching and I can't eat today because I have to fit this certain costume and I'm bigger than her, da da da. And at the time too, Miami was very small company, meaning everybody was short and tiny. I felt like the Hulk at 5'5".
5'5".
Literally, there were maybe one or two people that were 5'7", 5'8", but I was like,
Yeah.
what when I walked in the first day? But yeah. So once that started happening and I started getting taken out of roles because of my weight, because I was under so much stress, I was having an autoimmune flare up, which of course puts weight on you. So if you starve yourself, not only do you not lose weight, you end up making it worse. So then you're more stressed and your body freaks out even more. So it was this whole disaster situation. And when I was sitting there going, I'm reverting back to 18-year-old thought patterns at 31. I don't need this in my life. I don't need this to feel validated or like a dancer. I didn't want that. So once the pandemic hit, it kind of helped make the decision for me. We ended up ending the season early and then I just didn't go back. So yeah, I realized I don't want to actually live in these old mental patterns that I spent a decade trying to get out of. Being the person that was standing up for the dancers that weren't the smallest or were having body issues or mental health issues. And then all of a sudden reverting back to one, I was like, this is not what I even stand for. So why am I doing this? So I think that started my process of I can do this on my own terms. And before I spoke out, I had to make sure I was okay with never dancing in a company ever again because I didn't know, am I going to be blacklisted when I say all of this? They could literally ruin any chance of dancing anywhere ever again before I post this, if I post this video. So I was fine with it. I was like, I'm at the point in my life where I have other things. I have my YouTube, I can guest, I can teach. And so, yeah, that's what sort of gave me the courage to be like, nope, I'm going to speak out.
And I'm so grateful that you did, but that's such a scary step, as you mentioned, because this has been your whole life, it's your whole career. I can imagine just the mental struggle of being like, if I say this, what are the consequences? Am I going to be able to continue to dance? But you did. You figured it out because you have an incredible career. It's continued now as a teacher, as a judge. And you created this great YouTube channel, developed your own brand. You have your social media platform. I love this. This was such a lifeline to me during the pandemic because all the studios were shut down. I was taking classes with you online every day. And it was sort of this bright spot in my day when I felt like I didn't have that dance community anymore. So I'm curious if you could talk about how that all sort of came together and what the experience has been like, continuing to engage with ballet in that way.
It kind of came out of, to be honest, necessity from the pandemic. The YouTube channel I started that in 2014 and I remember when the pandemic hit, I got a huge influx of subscribers because my online classes were already there. So many people started doing them, but mine had already been there for, 6, 8 years. And so everybody was like, I remember people saying to me, Kathryn Morgan did online classes before online classes were cool. Like, it's just like, okay, cool, But so people started finding me then. I started teaching on Zoom, kind of flipped around to not only like anybody at home, but more teaching adults. And I didn't realize at the time how big of an adult following I had. So many people writing me, oh, I'm just coming back to ballet. I was traumatized as a child and I'm coming back to ballet. I never got to do ballet as a child. So now during the pandemic, I want to learn. So it was kind of this whole thing that just happened organically. And that's when my current business partner, Maria, reached out to me and was like, hey, let's do something with this. And so KM and Friends happened. And it originally in my head, it was going to be just like galas of professionals. Like we would travel and do galas. But then it turned into, adult workshops and bringing people in and online, classes and the adult summer retreat, which is a summer intensive we have. So it kind of just all evolved. And I never even planned on that happening. So I've always been one to kind of go with the flow, but also make lemonade out of lemons. And so just kind of be open to ideas and do things. And yeah, it's turned into what it is now.
And it's an incredible platform. I've engaged with it. I know that a lot of our listeners have too. And I love this story because it was the same for me with this podcast. During the pandemic, I was dancing online every day. And I noticed in the comments, it was so cool to see, you're in class with 250 other people from all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And in the comments, it was a lot of similar things. I'm an adult, in my 30s, 40s, 50s who never got to do ballet, who's returning to it. And I realized there's a whole community out there. And so I started this podcast because I wanted to connect with that community. And, I've just been so grateful for all of the work that you've done in the adult ballet space. I'm curious how you hope your platform can sort of encourage other dancers to dance on their own terms, because I know that can be kind of a challenge, as we discussed earlier.
Yes. One of my biggest taglines really is to find the joy again in ballet, because that's why we all started it. Nobody started getting into ballet to be rich, be famous, whether you're an adult at home or you're a professional, like that's not why we start. It's not like, well, I want to be an actor because I want to be really famous, or whatever people get into. You never say that, well, I want to be really famous, so I'm going to be a ballerina. Like that is never a thing. So only the select few get to be very, 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 very famous. So most people start ballet because they love it, or the music inspires them, or there's something that brings them some sort of joy. And so that's what I want to get back to. That's what I try to get back to with my, whether it's pre-professional kids or pros or adults. It's like, why did you start dancing? Can we get past and leave behind, you have to look a certain way, you have to wear a certain thing, there has to be this hierarchy in the room. Can we leave all of that and get back to why we started in the first place? So every teacher I bring in, every class I do, that's where I start from. Who's going to inspire? Who's going to have people smiling on the way out instead of hating their life on the way out? In the middle of balance, like when I'm teaching, in the middle of a balance, I'll be like, relax your shoulders, smile, don't hate life, just to get people to relax, because ballet does have this, like, I have to be perfect feeling. So that's where I start everything from. I still keep the integrity of the technique, the integrity of, what we teach, the teachers I bring in. Like, everybody knows what they're doing. Everybody has such a wealth of knowledge, but we teach in a way that inspires and uplifts rather than tears down. Because even now with my platform, I'm stepping more into the kind of curator role of it. There's some other things I want to try and keep doing in my career, but I still want this to keep going. And so, of course, I'm still teaching here and there, and I've been very honest about my teaching burnout, having been on YouTube for over a decade now. I'm like, I'm out of frappe combinations. I don't know. Like, is it? There's only so many, like 4 front, 4 side, like, I don't know. So I'm trying to bring in new people and still curate it. And still everybody I bring in has my stamp. And everybody I bring in, I know is going to inspire and uplift. So yeah, it's super important to me to keep this going, just to bring in more and more people and have more and more people feel safe in the environment.
It feels like you're in a classroom with you because of all those little comments that you make, throughout the videos. It just keeps you laughing. It keeps it joyful, as you said. One of my favorite things that you always say is, if you make a mistake, you're like, that's okay, over 30 club.
Yeah, 100%. Now we're the over 35 club. That's like a whole new club.
Another level. You leveled up.
Yeah.
As a dancer in that club as well, I appreciate that so much because you're teaching us it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to laugh. It's okay to sort of accept your body as it changes. So how can adult dancers kind of get past that mindset of, I'm too old to do ballet. I'm too inexperienced. I don't have the right look. And just kind of learn to accept themselves.
Yeah. It's one of those things that it's like you have to do this from that place of joy. Remember, you are going to that studio because you want to be there and you have a right to be there. I think a lot of adults, especially where there's not adult ballet class, they either get not taken seriously or they get put in with the kids. And so there's often not even a place for them. So even if they just come to me online, that's a place for them. So what I like to tell my adults is like, you deserve to be here. Remember, you paid to be here. Adults paid for class. So you go in and you do you and you enjoy it and you get out of it what you want to get out of it because you have every right to be there. You did not. That's one of the reasons I love working with adults. There's no parent making them do ballet. There's not some mom living out, so many students are pushed into ballet because the mother wanted them to do it, or it's fulfilling some sort of, I never got to do it, so I'm going to put you in it. And the poor child doesn't want to be there. Some kids, of course, desperately want to be there. I was one of them. My mother was the anti-stage mother. She was like, go be a brain surgeon. They make more money. But,
the anti-stage mother. I love that.
She's like, I'm not even going in the building. I'll see you later. Architect. Go be an architect, Katie. Go be an architect.
When you're ready, be a lawyer.
Yeah, totally. But like with the adults, they made the choice. So you have a right to be in that room. So you get out of it what you want to get out of it. And don't worry about what anybody else thinks. Of course, that is so much easier said than done. But, that's the thing with adult dancers. Every single one of them wants to be there.
And I think that is such a big difference because that's what creates such a welcoming community is that everyone's there just because of the joy and the passion of it. And you can really feel that in a classroom full of adult dancers. And we talk to a lot of adults who are also nervous to sort of take the leap and start ballet if they've never done it before. So what advice would you give to them for just kind of getting in the studio and getting started?
It's one of those things you just have to. I say this a lot because I teach a class once a week, a beginning adult class in person. And oftentimes I will have students off the street, never had ballet, just come in. And I can see them once, like the fear in their face. And then once we're 10 minutes in, they start to relax because literally the hardest part is just walking in. Once you're in, once you see everybody in that class is super welcoming. It's just making yourself take the leap. Because once you're in there, then it's like, okay, I can figure this out. I know what to expect now. We are coming out with a little mini course for beginners off the street. Kathryn Friends is that basically tells them all the stuff they need to know, what to wear, how to stand, all of that. So be looking for that. That's actually coming out very soon. So I'm glad you asked that. That'll be on kamandfriends.com. But yeah, it's just being brave enough to take that step and don't feel like you have to wear a leotard. Most of my adult students wear yoga pants and a top and ballet shoes, and that is great. I teach in yoga pants and a top. I purposely, in my adult ballet class, make sure I am not in dance clothes. So they also feel comfortable. Some days I walk in looking like a mess. Some days I'm in like my sweatshirt tied around my waist because I'm also trying to be relatable and not the like prima donna in the front of the room. I think that's another thing people get in their heads is like, oh, there's going to be some like woman in a tiara in the front of the room and she's going to be mean. And, so I try and get rid of that stereotype by looking more relatable for that. So that's just something I personally do in my own adult beginner class. But yeah, it's just taking the first step, literally.
I think that's huge to make the dancers feel comfortable because I think you're right. A lot of the fear is just the unknown. You don't know what to expect. And you're thinking of what you see on TV, or in the movies of ballet studios. We'll be right back with more from Kathryn after a quick break. Have you ever known someone with the guts to stand up for her principles and to fight for them against hopeless odds? Author Meg Groff is one of those people. An ex-hippie, she went to law school, then spent 40 years as a family court attorney defending the rights of domestic violence victims and low-income people. Meg has so many stories to tell, and today, March 4th, those stories are landing in bookstores across America. Meg's book is titled Not If I Can Help It, A Family Lawyer's Battles for Justice for Victims of Domestic Violence and the Poor. It's thought-provoking, shocking, and heartbreaking, but also funny and ultimately inspiring. You'll meet a cast of unforgettable characters and hear stories with amazing twists. And you'll discover just how unfair America's family courts can be and how we can all stand up for reform. Not If I Can Help It by Meg Groff is available now in bookstores and other book-selling platforms everywhere, or direct from the publisher at rivertownsbooks.com. There's a link in the show notes to the Rivertowns Books website, as well as Amazon and Goodreads if you're interested in purchasing Meg's book. By the way, Meg is having a book release party on March 16th at 4 p.m. at Puck Live in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. If you're in the area and want to stop by to meet the author and purchase a copy of her book, I'll include details in the show description as well. All right, back to the studio. We talked a little bit earlier about some of the work that you've done speaking out about body image and ballet. This has been so huge for the ballet community. I know that you did a Today Show interview several years ago that was very emotional. And you mentioned in an interview with Dance Magazine later that you didn't expect to get that emotional. You sort of thought, this is the time. No one's talking about this, so I need to just start talking about it. And so first of all, thank you for doing that, because still, today, not enough people are talking about it. But I was curious what went through your mind in that moment that just sort of clicked into, I need to start speaking out about this because no one else is.
Especially with the Today Show. I remember being there that morning in my hotel room going, how many ballet dancers get to speak on this widely, this sort of widely seen thing? Most of us, if we're on a Today Show or if we're wherever, we're dancing. They don't actually ever interview the dancers. So I was like, all right, this is a chance for the world at large to literally hear from a dancer. So I thought, I have to be honest. I knew my job was on the line. I knew there was a lot at stake. And that's how I felt too when I left and spoke out later also. Because then I had no company to answer to, I thought, if not me, then who? I am the one that can, because now I don't owe anybody anything. And this is one of those things that gets very much swept under the rug and nobody talks about, and everybody likes to pretend it's such a rarity. And no, we're all great and everyone loves their body. And, we really, want healthy dancers when actually you're in the trenches and you're in the thick of it. A lot of it is a smokescreen. And the ballet world really still hasn't changed that much. So for me, it was like, okay, I have the opportunity to be the one. I have the opportunity because, we don't get this chance all the time, especially on something like this Today Show. So I thought I have to. And then especially when I left, I thought I am the one that is not going to lose my job now because I chose to leave this company. I'm not going to lose a job. So I have to be the one to say something.
Right. Yeah, and it's so important that you did, because you're right. I didn't even think about that. But yeah, when dancers are normally on big national television programs like that, they're dancing. They're not, talking. Right. So you had such a huge platform to be able to do that. And I can imagine how scary it was too, being on such a huge program and being like, okay, I'm doing this, I'm speaking up.
It went so quick. It was the fastest 3.5 minutes of my life. I remember them sitting and then go, and then we just had to go, and then it was like over. And I was just like, blah! Just like, whoa. And then I remember Al Roker saying to me, you're really good at this. And I was like, thank you so much. Okay, bye. So I'll take that compliment forever that I was like, thank you. But it was the fastest. It blinked and it was over. So it's very, very stressful. It's like, whoa, we're done. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I can imagine. And then you have to get up at like 4 a.m. too, right? But it's so important that you spoke out. And I feel like there's, we talked about this earlier. There's sort of this culture in ballet where we're taught to be so quiet and, sort of take up space on stage and be big, but don't take up space otherwise. Right. And I feel like for dancers who are inspired by the way that you've spoken out, what are some actionable steps they can take wherever they sit in the ballet community to sort of raise their voices and advocate for themselves when they're in this culture where it's like, sit still, be quiet, don't speak up?
It's so tricky because that is what you are taught to do. You're literally taught to not speak, take criticism, look at yourself in the mirror all day long, dance what you're told, with whom you're told, when you're told. You're just, that's what you're trained to be. So it's another one of those things, kind of like we were saying earlier, no matter who you are, you all deserve to be there. You are a person first, not a dancer first. You have rights and you have feelings, and those feelings are valid. And it's just remembering that you are a human being. You're not a machine. You're not, a little minion that's told what to do. And that can be very hard in those situations where, especially in companies, it's all based on hierarchy. The artistic director, and when that artistic director walks in the room, it's like, I remember feeling that constantly. Even as nice as Peter Martins was to me, when he walked in the room, it was like my life was on the line. Because one wrong move and he wouldn't cast me again. And it's so hard to remember your own worth and value in a situation like that. So it's having interests outside of the studio. It's working on your self-worth away from dance. Because I think also so many people put their self-worth on how they look in the leotard, how I did on stage, how my pirouette was. So it's a lot. It took me a long time. A lot of self-worth work outside of being a dancer so that you know who you are as a person that just happens to dance. And it's, there's no like wonderful magic pill. I wish there was, but it's just knowing that you are valuable because you're a person first.
And that's such important advice for dancers to hear. And you mentioned something earlier that really resonated with me because I was the same way. When I returned to ballet and went back into the studio, I found myself also reverting to those behaviors from when I was a kid. And I'm in a studio of adult dancers and thinking, I'm in my 30s. Why am I acting like this? And I think, for a lot of adult dancers who are returning to ballet, that's a struggle to kind of just want to sit and be quiet and people please and, not put themselves out there. So for adult dancers who are returning to ballet, how can they get through that mindset? I imagine it's a lot of the same work, kind of, realizing that there's life outside of ballet, developing your hobbies. But is there anything else they can do to kind of work through wanting to revert back to how they acted when they were a kid in the studio?
Yeah, it's so tricky. It's something about like the bars and the mirror and the floor, and just all of a sudden it's like it clicks. You click back into I'm 12, you know. Yeah, it's remembering even when you're in a ballet class situation, there might be the instructor at the front of the room and that person is your teacher and that person is instructing you. But they're no better than you are because they're teaching the class. Do you know what I mean? There's no like, oh, that makes them a better person. I have to submit. And when I teach my adults, I really try and relate and be, we talk about things, I tell stories so that yes, I'm instructing them, but we're all equals. We're all adults. We're all in this together. Remember, you're an adult just like the teacher is an adult. And so many of my adult students are older than me. So it's hard for me as a teacher sometimes to be giving instructions and corrections to, these older people who I was always taught respect your elders. So it's like, that's kind of a weird dynamic for me, but we're all adults. We're all in this together. They're no better than you are simply because they're teaching the class. They just have information to relate to you. But yeah, it's very tricky.
This is kind of a big question too, and I know that there's not one answer to it. But from your perspective, how can the ballet community better support dancers' mental health and promote a more inclusive environment? What are some of the steps that studios or companies can take to get there?
I think with companies especially, just having more resources, having the mental health professional on staff, having somebody the dancers can go to on staff that's not going to then report back. Because in my experience in companies, oftentimes at the end of the day, the physical therapist would have to report to the artistic director what was going on or what they said. And I just remember feeling like, oh my gosh, there's no safe space. I'm constantly being listened to and watched. It's like a dictatorship. So I think it's just having, especially with ballet companies, those are adults. Like you have adult employees. Some of us were 17, but eventually we were adults. So minors a whole different story. But, so it's having the safe space that dancers can talk to someone that they know is not going to then report it back to the artistic director, who can actually give them tools, who is trained to help them through these things. I also think it's challenging the stereotypes. So many artist directors, it's not even their fault because that's how it was when it was in their day and age. They don't know any better. So they are literally just, like copy and paste of what their experience was because no one has ever challenged it. So it's challenging our eyes, challenging our thoughts, challenging what has always been to move the art form forward. Because ultimately, if we don't, ballet is going to die. If it stays this like elitist, snobbish, like only for certain people, you're literally alienating your audience and that's it. And so the art form itself is not going to do well. So we have to do this in order to make it more relatable to everybody.
Right. We have to move forward, because the audiences who are coming to ballet are evolving and we need to also evolve to, meet their expectations. And I think what you said is so important also about having a safe space, especially when you're in a company, you're in front of people on stage, you're in front of people in the studio. And then if you have these eyes and ears on you all the time, I'm reporting back to the artistic director, it's kind of like you're in a fishbowl. Like you don't really have any personal space.
Right.
I think that's a great point too about some of the resources that need to be accessible for dancers. And I appreciate all of the resources that you've provided for the ballet community, whether it's professional or, adult amateur dancers. And I know you mentioned that you have this new class for absolute beginners coming up. So I'll definitely link to your website in the show notes. And I hope all of our listeners will keep an eye out for that. And then you have a couple of other opportunities coming up too. You have your KM and Friends 2025 Adult Summer Retreat.
Yes.
In June and July in California. And then you also have, I'm excited about this because I live about an hour from New York. You have a KM and Friends 3-day mini retreat in New York in October. So
Yes.
can you talk a little bit about those and what they're about?
Yes. So act fast because for the summer one, the June, July one, we only have about 5 spots left for our summer retreat. So basically, I wanted to create, and my business partner Maria and I wanted to create an adult summer intensive that was focused on community first. I never liked the idea of adults feeling like they had to come in a black leotard and pink tights and take class all day. And that's not promoting the safe space that we wanted. So for me, with our adult retreat, yes, you're getting fantastic instruction. You're getting a lot of dancing. People dance a lot in our retreat, but it's also, there's community activities. It's about friendships and relationships and them interacting with us as instructors. Again, we're trying to break that hierarchy. So I'm at all the events, the faculties at the events. So it's kind of more of community and fun. The idea is if you go to a yoga retreat, it's the same thing, but ballet. Life changing in that. That's kind of our goal is I was inspired, I was uplifted. People have made lifelong friends at these retreats. So yes, there's a lot of dancing. Yes, there's high quality ballet education, but you're also meeting more people in this adult ballet community, which is so important because it's already a small thing and people feel very isolated. So yeah, that's what's very important to me as well.
Yeah, and you've built such an incredible community, all of the work that you're doing. It's just amazing what you've done for the ballet community as a whole. And are there any other upcoming projects that you wanted to share or anything else you wanted the listeners to know about?
I'm doing Caraboss and Sleeping Beauty in March here. My husband's school. Yeah, I'm very excited. All the fun without the stress. Because I pretty much have hung up the point shoes at this point. There's so many other things I want to do in my career, and it's the upkeep to dance at that professional level that I don't have the passion for anymore. So Caraboss is great. Give me some heels. We're good to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, a couple other things I probably can't talk about yet, but stay tuned for more workshops. I am doing a workshop with Allie Christensen, joint workshop in SoCal, May 31st and June 1st. So we're doing a joint workshop together.
Well, that's exciting. And that'll be in California as well.
That'll be in California as well. Yes.
Awesome. That's great. Well, we'll definitely link to your website. All of those details are on there, right? The listeners can find those.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah, I hope some of our listeners will check it out. And I know we're coming toward the end of our time. We do have one last section called Petit Allegro. It's just some quick, fun questions if you're okay with that.
Love it. Let's do it.
I always like to start off asking, what do you always have to have in your dance bag at every class or rehearsal?
Oh, leg warmers and several pairs of pointe shoes. I can't just have one.
Yeah, you always have to have a backup just in case something
Mhm.
happens. The
Yep.
other day, my elastics popped off in the middle of class. I had to go
Yep.
sew them back on.
Been there.
Always an adventure. And you're known for always having the most gorgeous coordinated outfits in your videos. I love this is an old video, but I love the Disney one where you changed into a different outfit for each character. It was amazing.
It was such a great idea in my head, and then I started doing it, and I was like, "This is gonna be an extra hour long for how many outfits and how much laundry I have to do." But it was
Oh my
fun, it
gosh,
was great.
yes. It was a really fun video. But doing this podcast, I have a new appreciation for all the videos you do because it takes so long, the editing
Yes,
process.
yes.
Do you have a favorite costume that you've worn on stage or any favorite ballet attire for class?
So, favorite costume for sure are the Aurora tutus, all 3.
They're gorgeous.
Stunning. I also loved my costume for a ballet called Tchaikovsky Piano Concerto No. 2, which is also known as Ballet Imperial. But the City Ballet version is Piano Concerto. And it was like this light blue sparkly dress with a huge tiara and, anything that was like sparkly and, girly, I'm good. And then for class, I don't know, just a long skirt. I don't do the short skirts, never have. The ones that like come to like mid thigh. I call them napkins. I'm like, I'm not wearing a napkin to class. I love a long flowy skirt for class.
Anyone who's performed professionally, I always like to ask, do you have any funny backstage stories that you can share?
So many. There was one ballet where I fell like twice in 30 seconds. And Peter was in the wing looking at me like, what? I could not stay standing. Tyler Peck and I collided in snow once in Nutcracker, because when the snow falls, a pen fell out of the sky. And so we were so fixated on not stepping on the pen that we smacked.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that was a good one. There was the story where in another Nutcracker story, there was a casting mix up and Drosselmeyer went to open the box and there was no soldier doll. So he did it himself as Drosselmeyer in the eye patch and the heels. He literally was like, okay, turned around and did it himself. He got the biggest round of applause. It was Robert LaFosse.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing. Stuff like that. It happens all the time. Many falls, many weird things. Yeah, just fun. I forgot choreography many times. You just stand there like, where am I? What am I doing?
Right. And the show just goes on.
It goes on. Yep.
No, that's great. I love that. The pen story is so funny to me.
Because you're looking at the floor, trying not, because if you catch an edge on the pen, you're going down. But Tyler and I miscalculated and like smacked.
So painful. Yeah,
Yeah.
Tyler's another dream guest for me. So if she ever comes on, I'll have to ask her about the pen story. That's great.
She remembers it. Yeah.
I know that you've mentioned that you really thrive in roles with a lot of dramatic acting, like Juliet from Romeo and Juliet. Is there a character from a ballet that you identify with the most?
Ooh, nobody's ever asked me that before. In a weird way, Giselle. I didn't go as far as she did, obviously, but I have been the naive one that's fallen for things, and then it's not, then the wool was pulled over my eyes, basically. But I think there's a little bit of her in me. There's a little bit of Juliet in me, although she's a little more reckless than I am. I don't know. Maybe even like Princess Aurora, because when I was a kid, I was just like, doo-doo-doo. I'm just like going to wear my pink and look pretty.
Oh, I was too.
Yeah. So I don't know. There's a combination of a couple of them in there.
The last question I always ask everybody who comes on is, in a perfect world, what would ballet look like, or what would you want it to be?
Just more widely known so more people can appreciate it, with all different shapes, sizes, colors. Like, why does it have to stay how it was? Like, why do we have to stay like in our little bubble? Why can't we have the ESPN of ballet? I'm gonna put it out there. My dream job is the host of ESPN Ballet. Like, it is. I would love to have, but it's not the Super Bowl. I love making it accessible. I love giving people context. Like, this is why it's good. So it's like commentating it, or, slowing it down so we can see the in-between steps that if you don't have a trained eye, you would never see. So I don't know, just more so people can appreciate it more. When you have that understanding, you can appreciate it.
I want that too, because I think that's the key to bringing ballet back into the mainstream is just making
Mhm.
it accessible and helping audiences to understand its beauty and what the rigor and the intensity that goes into the art form. Because you see the gracefulness on stage, you don't really know all of the work that's happening behind the scenes
Right.
is intense.
Right.
I hope for that too. And thank you so much for taking so much time to speak with me. It's been
Of
so great to
course.
talk to you. I really appreciate all of the work that you're doing. And for any listeners who are interested in connecting with you, where can they find you on social media?
So on social media, Kathryn Morgan on YouTube, just type my name. It's right there. Instagram, Kathryn_Morgan. And then the website to find me is kamandfriends.com.
Perfect. Okay, well, we'll link to all of that in the show notes, and hopefully our listeners will connect with you there. And thank you again so much. I appreciate you. Thanks for taking the time today.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I appreciate it.
I've been a fan of Kathryn's work for a long time, and I loved talking to her for this episode. I really admire how open, honest, and authentic she is. That's something we should all strive to be in and outside of the studio. She's a true inspiration, and the work that she's done for ballet as an art form has been so transformative. I'll link to her websites, kathrynmorganonline.com and kmandfriends.com, in the show notes, as well as her YouTube channel and social media, if you're interested in connecting with her or learning more about the upcoming events and classes she mentioned. Thanks so much to Kathryn for taking the time to speak with me, and thanks to all of you for listening. As always, you can reach out to me on social media at eblosfield or by email at theadultballetstudio@gmail.com with any questions, comments, or to request a guest for a future episode. If you like what you hear, please consider subscribing, rating, and leaving a review for this podcast on your platform of choice. Your support always helps. We'll be back next month on April 1st with another special guest, so stay tuned for that. And in the meantime, happy dancing, everybody, and see you at the bar.